Okay. So good morning, grade 10. We are now reaching the last topic of our mythology discussion. Yes, more or less, as an initial plan, this will serve as our final topic for mythology because mythology hopefully ends for the first quarter. For the second quarter and fourth quarter, we will be going for grammar. The third quarter, hopefully, will be for the Divine Comedy. If time allows, then hopefully the Divine Comedy can be spared for the third quarter. This last selection for mythology covers quite a length. There's a story that's found here. I gave the reminder yeah, I think it was yesterday. I hope you spared some time last night to read the contents of this selection, especially that this material's plot, the plot of this selection, happens to be portrayed differently from how the movie did it. For those to those who have seen the movie Troy, do not be surprised if we are seeing some irregularities between the plot that I'm going to share and the plot that you could recall from the movie Troy. Also, one clear difference between the plot that I'm going to present to you and the movie is the participation of the Greek gods and goddesses. In the movie, the Greek gods and goddesses did not take part in the war. But in the story presented by Edith Hamilton, the gods and goddesses did so much to influence the outcome of the war. So we begin the story of the Trojan War up to that moment when the city of Troy had fallen. The Trojan War begins with the feast or banquet celebrated by King Peleus and his wife Thetis, the sea nymph Thetis. There is a particular term for these sea nymphs. These sea nymphs are the 50 daughters of Poseidon. So we term these nymphs as, wait for a while, I'll type in Nereids. That's the term we give to these sea nymphs. One of these sea nymphs is Thetis, the one to be wed to King Peleus. King Peleus and Thetis are the parents of the Greek hero Achilles. So in their marriage, in the banquet of their marriage, all Greek gods and goddesses were invited except for one. And this goddess who was not invited was the goddess of discord, Eris. Again, it's Eris, not Ares. Ares is the god of war. Eris is the goddess of discord, the goddess of discord and mischief, or chaos, discord, and mischief. You have Eris. But of course, this is not the first time that Eris was not invited to so many events and occasions of the Greek gods and goddesses. The presence of Eris has not been welcomed because, as her name suggests, it just might bring about a discord in the conduct or in the occasion performance of the occasion. That is why there was this avoidance of inviting her. It came to that point when, in the marriage of Peleus and Thetis, she resented already the thought of not being invited. What she did was to throw in her famous golden apple. Her golden apples can do a lot of things. It can be an object of destruction. It can also be an object to grant wishes. It can also be an object of temptation. So her golden apple is a material, an object that could be manipulated in whatever way she desires, or in whatever way the owner of it wishes to use it. In this case, the golden apple that she has was labeled with for the fairest. And of course, that caught the attention of three goddesses. You have Hera, Pallas Athena, and Aphrodite. These three took into themselves the title of being the fairest. However, there was just one available golden apple. Zeus would not want to come in to solve the issue for the three. He would not want to choose who among them is the fairest because, let's try to evaluate. If he chose Hera, that would be an insult to Pallas Athena being his favored daughter. And that would also insult Aphrodite being the goddess of love and beauty. If in the event he chose instead Athena as his favored daughter, then Hera would see it as an offense to her being his wife. And the same goes with Aphrodite for being the goddess of love and beauty. And if he chose Aphrodite for her title, then the issue comes back again. Hera being the wife, and Athena, Pallas Athena, being his favored daughter. So he could not make the decision for these three. So what did he do? He told the three goddesses to look for one mortal. The name is Paris, and that Paris be the one to decide who among the three is considered to be the fairest. Where was Paris at that time? Paris was sent by King Priam to Mount Ida. I know some of you wanted to pronounce it as Ida. It's just pronounced actually as Ida. Mount Ida. But if you want, of course, we'll pronounce it as Mount Ida. Why was he sent there by King Priam? It was already prophesied that Paris will bring the downfall of Troy. It has long been foretold that one of the sons of King Priam, in the name of Paris, is bound to bring about the destruction and ruin of Troy. So to protect Troy, what King Priam did was to send Paris away in the guise of him tending to his sheep. That's how it was made to appear, that Paris was to tend to the sheep of Priam together with a nymph named Oenone. But that was purely to protect the city of Troy. When the three goddesses appeared in front of him, the question was there: who among them was the fairest? And of course, Paris could not just freely decide right away. So what the goddesses did was to present a bribe. They bribed him. And what was the bribe of each goddess? So we start with Hera. Hera's promise was to make Paris the lord or ruler of Europe and Asia. That was her bride. What was Athena's bride? It is to help the Trojans be victorious against the Greeks and lay Greece in ruins. That was the offer Athena gave to Paris. And here comes Aphrodite. Very simple. That she gives the most beautiful woman at that time to Paris. And Paris, the weak and coward that he is, chose the bride coming from Aphrodite. Of course, he's just probably playing the role of a man. If you think about it, the rule of the kingdom of Troy was not his concern to begin with. His older brother Hector, is still there in the equation. So ruling is not of his concern. Fighting is not also of his concern because the defense of Troy is at the hands, it's in the ruling as well of his brother Hector. So from what I could see, he placed himself in the situation where he could be more involved. And when it came to obtaining the fairest woman alive at that time, he need not consult his brother about this. He need not involve other persons in the concern. He only got it for himself. He decided to get it for himself, and so he accepted the bribe coming from Aphrodite. So at that moment on, Aphrodite was labeled the fairest woman, the fairest goddess in Olympus. And in the words of Edith Hamilton, that judgment of Paris marked the fall of Troy. So now we proceed. Helen, this woman that was considered to be the fairest of them all, is the prize that Aphrodite is going to give to Paris. However, Helen is Greek, not Trojan. And there is an unhealthy relationship between the Greeks and the Trojans. The Greeks have been wanting to conquer Troy because Troy has kept its name unconquerable for several years straight. The Greeks have failed to take over the city because its defenses were so strong that no nation was just able to conquer it. So we now bring ourselves back to who Helen is. As a Greek, Helen is actually the daughter of Leda and Zeus. But the acting or reputable father of Helen is Tendarius. So we have a human father figure to Helen, and that man is Tindarius. But if you trace it to the biological parents of Helen, we have Zeus and Leda. So as the biological father or the reputed father of Helen, Tindarius exercised authority over his daughter. Several suitors came and tried to win the hand of Helen. But among them, only one got the favor of Tindarius, and that was Menelaus. Menelaus was then crowned by Tindarius, made by Tindarius the king of Sparta. And his brother Agamemnon was one of his chieftains. So what happened here is Paris came to visit Sparta because Helen is there. In the guise of a visit, Paris reached Sparta, and as a guest, Menelaus welcomed Paris. Take note, Menelaus is now the supposed husband of Helen. But of course, Menelaus did not know that Paris came there to win the heart of Helen. All that he knew is that Paris went to Sparta as a guest. And since there is a strong tie between guest and host, Paris was welcomed with so much accommodation. In the visit of Paris, it reached a point where Menelaus left Sparta and went to Crete. So who were left in Sparta? We have Helen and Paris. Many would say that Paris abducted Helen. But many others would also believe that Helen was not abducted. Rather, Helen went in her own volition together with Paris. Menelaus came back to Sparta from Crete to find Helen not anymore there. So Menelaus thought of only one reason, one person to have taken away his love. And of course, he's right. This person is Paris. Paris took with him Helen. So Helen has now left Sparta and he has joined the hands of Paris. In his rage for what Paris did, Menelaus wanted to get back Helen. And getting her back means attacking Troy. In order to successfully do it, Menelaus needed to have a group of men who would prove to be quite a force in order to achieve success in their conquer of Troy. In this line of men, he had Odysseus and Achilles. Odysseus was the king of Ithaca at the time. The wife of Odysseus was Penelope, and their son was Telemachus. You have these names. I'll just type them in the chat box. Penelope is the wife. Telemachus is the son of Odysseus. And of course, you also have Achilles, the Greek hero, or the hero who has made so much of an impression in Greek history, in Greek stories. However, these two did not want to actually join at first. These two did not want to take part in this war, but actually Menelaus found a way for them to be able to join the Greek battle. So you have there the story presented by Edith Hamilton on how Odysseus was able to join the army and how Achilles was made to join the army. What's so significant about Achilles is that back when he was still an infant, his mother tried to turn him into an immortal. How did his mother do it? How did Thetis do it? Thetis submerged Achilles in the river Styx. However, in the process of submerging him, Thetis grabbed him by the heel of his foot. So one part of his body came to be very vulnerable to any physical attack, and that is his heel. In fact, that heel was the reason of his death. Eventually, in the run of the story, we'll find it out. And that's also the expression Achilles' heel comes in. That's one good reason why so many Greeks wanted, especially in the case of Menelaus and Agamemnon, they really wanted to recruit Achilles into their army because aside from that heel, everything else in him is not vulnerable to any physical attack. He could not be harmed by anything else except for that area in his body that was not submerged or dipped in the river Styx. So if you look at the story if you look at the plot presented by Hamilton, you have there a moment where Odysseus acted as a madman because he wanted to show that his madness is not a good thing to bring into battle. So he pretended to be a madman, and then he tried to plow a field while sowing salt instead of seeds. That's to prove that he is a mad person, a madman. However, what one of the messengers of Menelaus did to prove that he is not actually mad was to bring his son, Odysseus' son, in front of the plow. Since Odysseus would not want to kill his own son, he decided to turn the plow aside, and that proved to the messenger that Odysseus was not mad at all. If he were mad, he would have killed his own son. So it's now already proven Odysseus was not a madman. So he reluctantly joined the army of Menelaus and Agamemnon. And then you also have in the case of Achilles, where Thetis tried to to hide Achilles somewhere else. But Agamemnon and Menelaus sent Odysseus to a particular area, to the court of Lycomedes, and then there Odysseus displayed some toys for girls, weapons and ornaments ornaments for girls and weapons for boys. Then he saw one person touch these weapons, and that told Odysseus that that person was no less than Achilles himself. If he were not Achilles, then he should have not been entertained by the weapons that he placed, but the weapons that Odysseus placed. So now Odysseus and Achilles are part of the equation. In their journey towards Troy, suddenly a violent storm met the Greeks. What's the reason behind this violent storm? Why was there such a strong wind blowing all day after day after day? The soothsayer Calchas, we have a soothsayer or a fortune teller. The name is Calchas. Told the Greeks that Artemis was not pleased by what the Greeks did. One of the wild creatures of Artemis, a hare, that's a bunny, a rabbit, but they just term it as a hare, has been killed by the Greeks. And since Artemis is the protector of wild creatures and animals or of the forest, the death of the hare was seen by her as an attack to her as the goddess. So, in order to appease Artemis, Calchas said that a life should be sacrificed to replace the life that was taken from the forest. The life of the hare was taken. In exchange of that should be a person's life. And according to Calchas, the soothsayer, it will have to be the life of a royal maiden. Who is this royal maiden? It's that royal maiden is the daughter of Agamemnon, the eldest daughter of Agamemnon. She was sacrificed. How would you pronounce this daughter's name? I think I pronounced it already before. Angel, how was the name pronounced? I think instead, I don't know, but probably when you read this, when some of you read this at home, probably you read the name as Iphigenia. Hopefully no one from you read it as Iphigenia. But the name is better read as Iphigenia. Iphigenia. By the way, the name of Menelaus actually can be read as Menelaus. But I don't know, it just sounds better as Menelaus. Menelaus does not sound so kingly. It does not also sound Greek. That's why I went with Menelaus. Iphigenia. That is why if your name is spelled as Maria, if it's read as Maria, that's a Filipino name. But if it's read as Maria, that becomes a Greek name. So the pronunciation gives a Greek denotation. Theia. If it has an Eia sound, it has a Greek denotation to it. No one from who among you has a name? That's Miara. That's not Maria. No one else has a Ya name, no? You don't also read it as Ninaya May Milianar. It's just Ninya. So you have the name of Iphigenia, Juliana. No, it's no, unless it's not Julia but Julia. Julia is different from Julia. Julia is Greek. Julia is Pinoy. That's so Filipinized. Kiana. No, that's Kiana. It's not Kinaya. If it were Kinaya, then it becomes Greek. So you have Iphigenia, the eldest daughter of Agamemnon, who was sacrificed. And in her death, true enough, just like what Calchas had said, the storm, the wild storm, die down. So a life was taken in exchange for someone else's life. And so eventually in their journey, the Greeks reached the shore of Troy. And the Greeks were foretold that the first man to land ashore on the shores of Troy will really die. And it happened. Protesilaus, see the name Protesilaus, compared to reading it as Protesilaus. I bet when you read the story at home, you just read it as Protesilaus. But there's so much difference if you read it as Protesilaus. Protesilaus, the first Greek to leap ashore on Troy, died because it has already been foretold. The body of Protesilaus was even brought by Hermes to his wife named Laodamia. Compared to Laodamia, Philippinized, Laodamia, Greek. And then the Greeks are already there. They've tried to set camp in the shores of Troy, ready to make its attack once ready, preparing to make its attack once ready. Then we proceed now to bring our attention to the setup in Troy. So you have King Priam, the ruler of Troy. The wife of King Priam is Queen Hecuba. Queen Hecuba and King Priam had sons and daughters. For some reason, these sons and daughters have not been named fully right away, but we can name them now. So I'm not sure of the order though, but let's just identify names as I'm looking for the other names. Here. So you have Hector. Hecuba is Hecuba. Hector. Hector could probably be acknowledged as the oldest among the sons and daughters, among the kids of Priam and Hecuba. You have Hector. You also have Deiphobus. Deiphobus, Deiphobus. It's there. Deiphobus. You also have Helenus. You also have, let's go to the daughters now, Cassandra. Cassandra is is one of the daughters of Priam and Hecuba, and their other daughter is Polixena. There. So you have a total of 6 children of Priam and Hecuba. You have Hector, Deiphobus, Helenus, Cassandra, Polixena, and Paris. Do not, of course, forget Paris. Paris is still there. In fact, Paris is the one. Paris is already bringing with him Helen. And true enough, when Paris went back to Troy, there was a state of shock and surprise from the end of King Priam, much so from King Priam, because King Priam is well aware that that woman is not Greek. Sorry, it's not Trojan, but Greek. And King Priam could already imagine what problem it could bring. And when he saw for himself Paris bringing Helen to Troy, this just placed the prophecy on its way. This just made the prophecy true that Paris will really be the bringer of the fall of Troy. Yet, as it is by his son's desire, Paris being his son, as it is by his son's wish that Helen be with him, Priam accepted Helen. Helenus, by the way, is a seer. Seer meaning he has the capacity to see what the gods will. Cassandra has the ability of prophecy. However, she has been cursed by Apollo, Phoebus Apollo, that whatever it is that she says, no one should believe her. As to what brought about this curse, stories would say that Apollo tried to go after Cassandra. You know what going after means. And Cassandra refused. And this displeased Apollo. In effect, she was cursed. Apollo cursed her. And that's the curse. That even if she has the gift of foresight or the ability to foretell things, no one would believe her. And in fact, there's an effect to this curse came out later on in the story. So we now proceed. The Greeks now have tried to craft a plan to attack Troy. In that plan, they wanted to involve Achilles. However, Achilles and Agamemnon had a conflict because one of the because Apollo's the daughter of Apollo's priest was taken by Agamemnon for himself. This decision was disliked by Achilles. He did not like the idea of taking the daughter of Apollo's priest. Who is this woman? Who is this daughter that we are talking about? We are talking of Chryseis. So you have Chryseis, and she is the daughter of Apollo's priest. The name of that priest is Chryses. I'll type in the spelling of the priest's name. That name is the name of the priest of Apollo. Chryseis is the name of the daughter of that priest. Agamemnon took Chryseis to himself, which a decision which was disliked by Achilles, and that ensued a conflict between them. The priest Chryses then prayed to Apollo because he served Apollo. And from that moment, Apollo launched fiery arrows upon the Greek army. These fiery arrows sickened and the men who were hit by these fiery arrows got sick and they died, because that was the punishment provided by Apollo to the Greeks because of the decision made by Agamemnon. So eventually Achilles called for an assembly of the chieftains. That assembly was to find a solution to the punishment provided by, because the punishment was a continual punishment. It was according to Hamilton that the funeral pyres of the Greeks were continually burning, meaning the punishment went on and on and on. So Achilles had to call for an assembly among the chieftains. And it was in that assembly that the prophet, again Calchas, came in. And this provided Agamemnon the idea that his choice, his decision was really wrong. That he had to really let go of Chryseis. He did. Agamemnon let go of Chryseis, but Agamemnon was not yet satisfied. He still wanted to have a woman for himself. So he sent two of his men to the tent of Achilles and took Achilles' woman named Briseis. Briseis was a woman that was already dear to Achilles. Probably there's some form of relationship between them, between Achilles and Briseis. And so he was unwilling to give Briseis to Agamemnon. In fact, Briseis, no, Achilles told these two squires, two men of Agamemnon, that Agamemnon would pay dearly for such a deed, for such an action. And that still made Achilles reluctant, no, not made. And that incident made Achilles decide not to join in the war against the Trojans yet. Because later on he did. So initially, the battle between the Trojans and the Greeks was not participated by Achilles because he saw the actions of Agamemnon to be an attack to him. Night came. Achilles' mother, Thetis, told him that this behavior of Agamemnon is so wrong and that it would have been better for him to just leave him out of this. Thetis herself was worried in the participation of Achilles in this battle because she knew, and she also told Achilles of this, she knew that the moment Achilles joins that battle against the Trojans, the moment he takes part in that battle, he is already sealing his own death. It was already bound to happen that when Achilles joins the battle against the Trojans, he will die. That is why Thetis, if he had her own way, would not want for Achilles to join. In the course of the story, Achilles' participation in the battle was also quite delayed. It did not happen right away for him to join the battle, not until that moment that his dear cousin, the man that was dearest to him, died. Now, we do not really know the main reason why he participated in the battle. Is it just because is it just because a bloodline person died? A person of blood relations to him died? Or is it because of something more than that? Oh, Leija approved. Is it probably because someone he dearly loved was killed that now he eventually changed his mind into joining the battle? Because if you think about it, if it's just a mere honor, if it's just a mere story of honor and pride, well, of course, he could have joined in the earlier part of the story, in the earlier conquest of the story. But why did it have to reach a point that only after the death of his dear cousin did he decide to join the battle? Anyway, we can leave that as an open statement for the rest of the readers to quite wonder on. Let's now reflect on what the gods and goddesses of Olympus are trying to, or what sides they're trying to take on. Aphrodite favored Paris. So Aphrodite is with the Trojans. Apollo is the god worshipped by the Trojans. So Apollo favored Hector. Hera, Athena were not chosen by Paris. So as expected, they were Hera and Athena favored the Greeks. Ares, as there's a particular way to describe it. As Ares always took sides with Aphrodite, he also favored the Trojans. What about Poseidon? Poseidon loved the Greeks for they are seafarers. So Poseidon is with the Greeks. So where did Zeus place himself? Zeus liked the Trojans best, but he could not just simply disagree with Hera whenever he felt like doing so. He wanted to keep his neutrality, but he can't also say no to Thetis. What's so important to Thetis? Why is it that Zeus found it difficult to refuse the request of Thetis? On several accounts, there's one that really stands out. I don't, for sure it's not in this book, but there are accounts in mythology where Athena, Poseidon, and Hera rebelled, revolted against Zeus. And Thetis was the one who sided him. So Zeus found some form of confidence with Thetis. That's one.
Again, sir, who were they, sir?
Poseidon, Athena, and Hera rebelled against Zeus.
Thank you, sir.
And then Thetis was one of those who sided with him. Another thing, Poseidon and Zeus tried to court Thetis. They did. However, they chose to end the courting when they found in a prophecy that the son, the firstborn son of Thetis, is bound to kill his father. In order for it not to happen to Poseidon, or most especially to Zeus, they stopped courting her. Because if they did not, especially with Zeus, it's really going to happen that he be dethroned. Much so, be killed. And yet, the prophecy continued on. No, this is now the God of War, John. The story continued on with Thetis, that his presence, his birth, is bound to dethrone a father. So in the birth of Achilles into the human world, Achilles was bound to dethrone his father, King Peleus. Prophecy already stated it. However, that moment did not come as another prophecy took place. So what prophecy am I referring to? The participation of Achilles in the Trojan War. Diba, the prophecy that Thetis did not like is the one that drove her to protect Achilles was if Achilles joins in the Trojan War, he'll really die. And he did. He joined man, so he died. That's why the prophecy of overruling or dethroning Peleus did not also anymore happen. Let's proceed. We proceed now. There came a time when in the battle of the Trojans and the Greeks, a moment between Paris and Menelaus came. And then this moment was respected so much by the Greeks and Trojans that the opportunity was given to them that whosoever dies, or if one between the two has died, that meant the defeat of the other kingdom. Like if Menelaus died, that meant the end of the Greeks. Or if Paris died, that also meant the end of the Trojans. So the battle ensued between Paris and Menelaus. But you should know, Paris is a coward. Paris is not the kind that goes into battles. Menelaus is. For having a brother who is a chieftain, Agamemnon being a chieftain, and for being a ruler or king of Sparta, you should expect that Menelaus himself has already been engaged into battles and wars before. Paris, the only thing that he was probably good at was tending sheep, was not the kind who goes into battle. Um, there came a moment of respite between them, but wait. Menelaus would have Menelaus would have had the upper hand in this battle if not for Aphrodite. Menelaus would have had an edge if not for Aphrodite. Aphrodite came to the rescue of Paris. And it is quite expected. Aphrodite favored Paris. But this is something that was not welcomed well, especially by the Greeks, especially by Menelaus. So Menelaus felt so furious that he saw it as a Trojan's attack to the Greeks. And the battle continued. The battle continued between the Trojans and the Greeks. The gods took part in that battle already. Athena came down. He persuaded Pandarus, a Trojan, to shoot an arrow at Menelaus. And then this led to complications in the battle. You have the names of Ajax and Diomedes, two Greek champions. Other than Odysseus and Achilles, Ajax and Diomedes are also good when it comes to battles. In fact, one of them wounded Diomedes, wounded Aphrodite in her hand. In Aphrodite's attempt to save his own son, Aeneas, Aeneas is the son of Aphrodite, one of the generals of the Trojans, Aeneas. Aeneas was about to be killed by Diomedes. Diomedes brought Aeneas to a moment of near death, and then Aphrodite came down to protect his own son, her own son. In that attempt, Diomedes wounded the hand of Aphrodite. But what happened? Aphrodite dropped Aeneas to the ground, and Aphrodite rushed her way back to Olympus, weeping in pain. And where was Aeneas? Again, she was dropped on the ground. But Aeneas was not killed. Aeneas was protected by Apollo. Apollo came, covered Aeneas in a cloud, and took Aeneas to the holy place of Troy named Pergamos. Pergamos, where Artemis healed Aeneas of his wound. In fact, later on in the many accounts, Aeneas is identified as the only surviving general of the many generals of Troy. That's the reason why he survived. He was safeguarded. He was taken somewhere safe by Apollo. And that area and that place was the holy place of the Trojans named Pergamos. Much so that when he reached the place, he was healed by Artemis. But when this happened, Diomedes' rage and hype did not die down. he continued on with his desire to kill more Trojans. In effect, he saw Ares, a god. So just imagine this: gods, goddesses coming down from Olympus, joining the battle. Most probably, they did not appear as big as how stories projected them. They probably appeared like human-sized beings that they could be easily fought or attacked by other mortals. I mean, if they appeared like the gods and goddesses movies projected them, like the big gods and goddesses that they were, then mortal wounds would not inflict them pain, or mortal attacks would not inflict them pain. But since they, in the account of what happened to Aphrodite, she wept in pain and hurriedly went to Olympus. Ares was actually attacked. Ares was hurt. In fact, Diomedes hurled his spear, and Athena drove it to enter the body of Ares. It did. It pierced Ares. That's a proof that these gods and goddesses who took part in the war probably just looked like ordinary mortals, except that they are bringing with them there being a god and goddess. So when Ares was pierced by the spear thrown by Diomedes, he bellowed so loud in pain, and then he eventually fled back up to Olympus. For now, time is 10:36. Let's end it there. Let's end it with the scene where Ares went back to Olympus as he has just been hurt by Diomedes. What did Athena do? Athena was the one. Oh, so it's like this. I'm Ares. No, I'm Diomedes. I would not want to be the one being hurt by the spear. I'm Diomedes. I have a spear. I hurled the spear, and for it to really hit hit a god, Athena was driving it or guiding it for it to land on the body of Ares, pass through the body of Ares, as it entered the body of Ares. So that's what Athena did. So for now, we'll end it there. And I think we are halfway through the story of the Trojan War. We're halfway there.